In the far reaches of the galaxy, the Galactic Council had ruled for eons. They were a coalition of the oldest and most advanced species, proud and unyielding, overseeing the affairs of every star system within their domain. For centuries, they had maintained control through manipulation, diplomatic pressures, and threats of economic sanctions. In their view, their supremacy was absolute, unshakable. They believed they were the pinnacle of galactic civilization, a coalition to be feared and respected by all. But then, humanity emerged. The Terran Empire, a united force of humans, began its rapid ascent, expanding across star systems with technology that rivaled the Council's own. Humanity was different from the species the Council had dealt with before. They were aggressive in their growth, adaptive in their tactics, and unafraid of the challenges that space threw at them. In a few short centuries, humanity became a force too large for the Council to ignore. To the Council, humanity was a problem that needed to be dealt with quickly. They believed they could bring the Terran Empire to heel, as they had done with countless other civilizations before them. The Council, as always, fell back on their tried-and-true method of control. They issued demands. The Terran Empire was to halt its expansion immediately. They were to pay heavy taxes to the Council, cease their military development, and relinquish control of several key colonies. It was a demand issued not with the intent of negotiation, but as an ultimatum. The Council expected compliance, for that was what they had always received. But this time, the Council had miscalculated. Terribly. The Terran Empire didn't see themselves as just another species to be bullied into submission. They had fought too hard, too long, and had grown too powerful to bow to the whims of ancient bureaucrats who had long lost touch with the realities of a changing galaxy. When the Council's demand arrived, humanity didn't flinch. There was no hesitation. No lengthy debates. The Empire's response was swift and resolute. A message was broadcast to every corner of the galaxy, every species, every planet, every outpost. The message was simple: humanity would no longer recognize the authority of the Galactic Council. The Terran Empire would not negotiate under threat, nor would they stand idle while their future was dictated by those who refused to see the tide of change sweeping across the stars. It was a bold declaration, one that many in the Council had not expected. The shockwaves from humanity's defiance rippled through the galactic community. Some species were outraged, calling for immediate action, military or otherwise. But others watched with interest. This was the first time anyone had dared stand against the Council so openly, and it was clear that the Terran Empire had no intention of backing down. The Council, in their arrogance, believed they still had the upper hand. They assumed humanity's strength was overstated, that their fleets were no match for the combined might of the Council's forces. To them, humanity's defiance was little more than a temporary nuisance, one that would be crushed soon enough. But they had underestimated the Terran Empire, and by the time they realized it, it would be too late. Humanity had grown tired of the Council's overreach. Over the years, the Council had meddled in their affairs, set restrictions on their trade, imposed tariffs, and demanded loyalty in return for galactic protection. But humanity had built their empire on independence and perseverance. They had forged their path not through reliance on others, but through sheer determination. The Council's arrogance, their belief that humans would bow to them as others had, would prove to be their undoing. The Terran leadership knew the time had come to make their move. They had prepared for this, anticipating that the day would come when they would need to assert their independence. And now, with the Council's demands in hand, they were ready. They wouldn't simply defend themselves. They would strike first. Admiral Sarah Kane stood at the helm of the Terran fleet, calm and calculating. She had seen conflict before countless times. But this was different. This was not a battle for territory or resources. This was about making a statement that would echo across the galaxy. The Galactic Council had overplayed their hand, and now humanity was ready to show them just how far they had come. The Terran Empire had long prepared for the day when they would need to defend their sovereignty. They had developed technologies that no other civilization could rival, technologies that were kept secret from prying eyes, even the Council's. Their fleets were equipped with advanced AI systems, capable of coordinating vast armadas with near-flawless precision. Their FTL, faster-than-light, drives, enhanced through years of research, allowed them to move faster and strike deeper than any other known force. Kane knew the plan inside and out. It wasn't just about brute force. The Council's military was vast, spread thin across the galaxy. Their strength lay in their numbers and their control over multiple species. But their bureaucracy had slowed them down. They had grown complacent, relying on old strategies and outdated technology. The Terran Empire, in contrast, was swift, adaptive, and unburdened by the weight of tradition. The first phase of the counterstrike was simple: take out the Council's communication hubs and military outposts. These outposts were scattered across several sectors, each one essential to the Council's ability to coordinate their defenses. Without them, the Council's military would be left blind, unable to respond quickly or efficiently. Kane's fleet, led by the flagship Resolute, would target these outposts simultaneously, using their advanced FTL capabilities to bypass Council patrols and defensive positions. It would be over before the Council even realized what was happening. As the fleet prepared to engage, Kane stood with her officers, discussing the final details. They were ready. Her confidence in her crew was absolute. Each one of them had trained for this moment, and each one of them knew what was at stake. Failure was not an option. The Empire was counting on them to deliver the first blow in what would be a war for humanity's future. The first target was a key military outpost near the Galactic Rim, one that served as a central communication hub for the Council's fleet. The outpost had long been considered impenetrable, protected by layers of defense grids, automated drones, and a small contingent of Council warships. But those defenses had been designed for traditional warfare, for enemies who would approach through known hyperspace lanes and follow established rules of engagement. The Terran fleet, however, was anything but traditional. With their FTL drives fully engaged, Kane's fleet emerged from hyperspace within striking distance of the outposts, bypassing the defenses entirely. The surprise was complete. Within moments, the Resolute and its accompanying ships opened fire, their weapons systems targeting the outpost's critical infrastructure. Planet-cracking weapons, specifically designed to take out hardened targets, were deployed, and the outpost's shields, overwhelmed by the precision and power of the attack, collapsed within seconds. The outpost didn't stand a chance. Its defenses, once considered formidable, crumbled under the sheer force of the Terran assault. In less than an hour, the hub was nothing more than debris floating in space, its remnants a testament to the Council's miscalculation. The communications blackout was immediate. The Council's forces in the surrounding sectors were cut off, unable to coordinate or request reinforcements. But Kane wasn't finished. The first strike was just the beginning. The Terran fleet moved with brutal efficiency, hitting outpost after outpost, each one a critical node in the Council's vast network. Every strike was precise, every target carefully chosen to inflict maximum damage with minimum effort. The Council, caught completely off guard, was left scrambling to understand the scale of the attack. Their ships, spread thin across multiple sectors, were too far away to respond in time. For the Council, the realization was slowly dawning. They had underestimated humanity. They had thought the Terran Empire was just another upstart civilization that could be cowed into submission with threats and demands. But the Empire's response was a display of power unlike anything the Council had ever seen. It was swift, decisive, and terrifying. As the Terran fleet continued its assault, Kane received updates from her commanders. The mission was going exactly as planned. The Council's defenses were collapsing faster than anticipated, their military infrastructure unraveling with each passing hour. The outposts that had once stood as symbols of the Council's dominance were now nothing more than shattered ruins, silent in the vacuum of space. And yet, there was no sense of celebration among Kane and her crew. They knew the real challenge still lay ahead. The Council's seat of power, the heavily fortified planet of Tarala Prime, was their ultimate target. It was there that the Council's leadership resided, and it was there that humanity would deliver the final blow. But for now, Kane focused on the task at hand. The first phase of the counter-strike had been a resounding success, and humanity had sent a clear message to the galaxy. They were not to be trifled with. As Kane's fleet regrouped for the next phase of the operation, she couldn't help but think about the days to come. The Council would no doubt attempt to retaliate, to regain some semblance of control. But it was too late. Humanity had shown its strength, and the galaxy would never be the same again. As the dust settled from the initial strikes, chaos erupted within the Galactic Council. What had once been a bastion of order and control was now gripped by panic. The council chambers, usually filled with calm deliberation, were now the scene of frantic debates and accusations. Species that had once stood united under the banner of galactic peace were turning on each other. The reality of the Terran Empire's retaliation was setting in, and it wasn't just the devastation of their outposts. It was the sheer audacity of humanity's defiance. The Council had grown complacent over the centuries. Their rule had never been truly challenged. For the first time, they were facing an enemy who not only refused to bend but had struck with such precision that their entire military network was collapsing. Messages from surviving outposts and warships were pouring in, but they were disjointed, confused. Some commanders weren't even sure who or what had hit them. The Terran Empire had moved so quickly that even their artificial intelligence systems struggled to process the speed of the attacks. In the heart of the Council's leadership, the various species were locked in heated discussions. Blame was thrown around like currency. The more ancient races, those who had been part of the Council since its inception, were pointing fingers at the newer members, claiming they hadn't done enough to stop humanity's rise. The newer members, in turn, accused the Council's older members of ignoring the signs, of underestimating humanity for too long. But it didn't matter now. The damage was done. Their carefully constructed network of control, which had spanned galaxies and ruled over countless species, was unraveling faster than anyone could have predicted. The problem wasn't just military. Economically, the Council was losing its grip. Trade routes that had been under their control were now being disrupted. Entire sectors of space had gone dark, and those who had once relied on the Council for protection were now questioning if that protection was worth anything at all. As the internal bickering continued, a few level-headed voices tried to restore order. Some suggested that they could still negotiate with humanity, that perhaps an offer of peace could be made before the situation spiraled further out of control. But this was quickly shot down. The majority of the Council, still clinging to their superiority, couldn't fathom the idea of negotiating with what they saw as an upstart empire. They believed that humanity's victory was a fluke, a one-off success that could be reversed if they just regrouped and struck back. But striking back required coordination, and that was the one thing the Council was now lacking. With their communication hubs destroyed and their military forces scattered across multiple galaxies, there was no clear path forward. The few fleets that could still be mobilized were nowhere near strong enough to take on the Terran Empire directly, and sending them would only result in further losses. The Council's leadership was at an impasse. They were out of options, but their arrogance refused to let them see the truth. Meanwhile, as the Council scrambled to make sense of the situation, Admiral Kane and the Terran fleet were preparing for the next phase. Kane's intelligence reports indicated exactly what she had expected: total chaos. The Council had always been slow to act, bogged down by its own bureaucratic processes, but now they were paralyzed. They had never faced an enemy who could move with such precision and efficiency. Kane knew it was time to press the advantage. But the Terran Empire wasn't just focused on military dominance. The political landscape of the galaxy was shifting in their favor as well. Species that had once feared the Council's wrath were now looking to humanity as a potential liberator. The cracks in the Council's foundation were widening, and many civilizations, long under the Council's thumb, were starting to wonder if the Terran Empire could offer them a better deal. Kane had anticipated this. The Terran Empire wasn't interested in ruling through fear or domination, they wanted cooperation. Humanity had learned from the mistakes of the Council. They knew that true power came not just from military strength, but from unity, from offering something that no one else could. The galaxy was watching closely now. Every move the Council made, every failed attempt at regaining control, was being scrutinized by species who had once sworn loyalty to them. And with each failure, humanity's influence grew. Kane's fleet wasn't just fighting a war, it was winning hearts and minds. The Council, for all its strength, had never understood the importance of that. They had ruled through fear for too long, and now that fear was being replaced by something else: hope. Hope that the galaxy could be different, that there was an alternative to the stagnant rule of the Council. As the Council's leaders finally realized the gravity of their situation, they made one last desperate attempt at salvaging their authority. A message was sent to the Terran Empire, an offer of negotiation. They proposed a ceasefire, a chance to discuss terms before the conflict escalated any further. But the message was too little, too late. Kane had already received her orders from the Terran leadership, and those orders were clear: there would be no negotiation. The Council's offer was met with silence. In the vacuum left by that silence, the Council's unity shattered completely. Species that had once been loyal began openly discussing defection. Some even sent secret communications to the Terran Empire, seeking assurances of protection in exchange for cooperation. The Council, now fully aware that they had lost their grip on the galaxy, could do nothing but watch as their centuries-old alliance disintegrated before their eyes. Humanity had not only struck back with military might but had exposed the Council's weakness to the entire galaxy. They had shown that the Council was not invincible, that its power was an illusion propped up by tradition and arrogance. And now, with that illusion shattered, the Terran Empire stood ready to take its place at the center of galactic affairs. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the final stages of the operation unfold. The Terran fleet had successfully neutralized the majority of the Galactic Council's forces, and now, all attention was focused on Tarala Prime. It was the beating heart of the Council's power, heavily fortified, but isolated from the rest of the galaxy. With the Council's communication networks crippled and their outposts destroyed, Tarala Prime was left vulnerable, cut off from any chance of reinforcement. The fleet was on its final approach, and Kane knew that this would be the defining moment. Tarala Prime was not just a symbolic target, it was the Council's last stronghold. The Council's leaders, now desperate and out of options, had retreated there, believing that their ancient defenses would hold off any attack. They were wrong. As the Terran ships moved into position, Kane ordered the fleet to deploy its planet-cracking weapons. These were the most powerful tools in the Terran arsenal, capable of reducing entire planetary installations to rubble in a matter of minutes. But this wasn't just about destruction, it was about demonstrating that the old order was over. Humanity wasn't interested in simply defeating the Council militarily. They wanted to send a message to the entire galaxy: the reign of the Council was finished, and a new era was about to begin. The first wave of strikes hit the outer defense grids of Tarala Prime, overwhelming the shields that had protected the planet for millennia. The Council's last-ditch efforts to mount a defense were futile. Their ships, outdated and underprepared, were no match for the precision and power of the Terran fleet. The planet's orbital defenses were destroyed in minutes, leaving the surface exposed. On the ground, panic was spreading through the Council's ranks. Their once unshakable confidence had evaporated in the face of humanity's relentless advance. Even as their cities burned and their defenses crumbled, the Council's leaders continued to argue among themselves, still unable to grasp the full extent of their failure. They had relied on their position of authority for so long that they had forgotten what it meant to actually fight for survival. Now they were learning that lesson the hard way. Kane watched as the final wave of planet-cracking weapons was launched. The surface of Tarala Prime erupted in a series of devastating explosions, wiping out the last remnants of the Council's military infrastructure. The planet's once grand capital, a symbol of the Council's power for thousands of years, was reduced to ash. It was over. The Council's reign had come to an end, and with it, the old order of the galaxy was shattered. But even in victory, Kane remained focused. This was not the time for celebration. The collapse of the Council had left a power vacuum, and humanity needed to ensure that the transition to a new galactic order was smooth. The Terran Empire had no interest in ruling through fear and oppression like the Council had. Their goal was cooperation, unity, and the establishment of a new system where all species could thrive, under human leadership, of course. Back on Earth, the news of the victory spread rapidly. Humanity's triumph over the Galactic Council was greeted with overwhelming support. The people of the Terran Empire had always believed in their potential, but now, they had proven it to the galaxy. They had not only stood up to the most powerful coalition of species in the known universe, but they had also toppled it, reshaping the future of galactic politics in the process. Across the galaxy, former members of the Council were already seeking new alliances with humanity. Species that had once been bound to the Council's will were now free to chart their own course. Some chose to join the Terran Empire, while others sought independence, but all of them acknowledged that the days of the Council's rule were over. Humanity had not only defeated the Council militarily, they had exposed its inherent weakness and opened the door for a new, more balanced system of governance. Kane's fleet remained in orbit around Tarala Prime, ensuring that there would be no further resistance. The Council's leaders, those who hadn't fled or been killed in the assault, were taken into custody. They would stand trial, not in a human court, but in a newly established galactic tribunal, made up of representatives from species across the galaxy. It was the first step in building the new order, one where humanity was a key player, but not a dictator. The Terran leadership knew that this was their moment to cement their place in history. They didn't want to repeat the mistakes of the Council, who had ruled through coercion and intimidation. Humanity's strength had been proven, but now they needed to show that they could lead with wisdom and fairness. The Terran Empire offered protection, technological advancements, and the promise of a future where every species could thrive, as long as they were willing to work together. In the aftermath of the battle, the galaxy began to reshape itself. The former Council territories, once tightly controlled, now became hubs of cooperation. Trade routes reopened, not under the strict oversight of the Council, but with new agreements brokered between species that had never had the chance to speak as equals. The Terran Empire played a central role in these negotiations, acting as both mediator and protector. For Kane, the victory at Tarala Prime marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The galaxy would never be the same, and humanity's place within it was now secured. They had risen from a relatively small empire to the most influential force in the known universe, not just because of their military might, but because they had shown that they could break the chains of the past and forge a new path forward. As the fleet prepared to depart from the ruins of Tarala Prime, Kane reflected on the journey that had brought humanity to this point. They had faced impossible odds, but time and again, they had proven that they were stronger, smarter, and more resilient than anyone had expected. The Terran Empire had struck back, and in doing so, they had not only defended their sovereignty, they had redefined the future of the galaxy. With the Council defeated and a new galactic order on the horizon, humanity's future was brighter than ever. Kane knew that challenges still lay ahead, but she also knew that humanity had the strength and the vision to face whatever came next. The galaxy belonged to them now, and under their leadership, a new era was beginning.